Now call this meeting to order. This is the board meeting for Winesburg Unified School District for June 23rd, 2022. Nice to see everybody. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for the cabinet. Thank you for our principals, our counselors, our executives, our cabinet, and of course our volunteer board members. Good to see you. And if you're joining us at home, nice to see you as well. Tonight's regularly scheduled board meeting, although the school year is done for the students, it is not done for us. We have two more meetings, this one and then a quick meeting on Monday to validate our LCAP and budget.
If there are any public comments on Zoom, please click the raise your hand button. But at this time, I do not have any public comments.
All right.
budget overview for parents. We also have the supplement, which was brought to the board in January as a progress report on the LCAP and its implementation. This is a 3-year plan. This is our first year using it. It was developed last year in 2021 by our educational partners. And it also looks at a summary of the entire plan. That's really a good place to go if you want to know about the LCAP, how we engaged our educational partners, all the goals and actions, and most importantly, how we increased or improved services for our unduplicated pupil population. The action tables speak to our budgets. So we have all of our goals are stated there. These are also our assurances in the district: safety, student-centered whole child, future ready, community and collaboration, organizational strength. And you'll find these in our school site plans. You'll find them in our LCAP. You'll find them everywhere in our district. And these align to the next slide, which are the 8 state priorities. These are very familiar because they also align to the local indicators. So everything is balanced. And finally, the LCAP process. The implementation of the LCAP goals and actions kick off the school year. We bring out those goals and actions with our principals. And when we're talking about interventions or we're talking about our ELD program, all those things begin right off the bat. About mid-year in January, we go through the evaluation progress report with the annual update. Again, that's when we bring it back to the school board and talk about how we're doing. We go on to identify our needs with our stakeholder groups. This is done with a survey in January. We also go out to each of the PTAs at our school sites. We have an LCAP committee with special ed representation from the local SELPA. We make sure we have a parent advisory group as part of that LCAP committee. Then we measure our expected outcomes. We're looking at our local data, our CASP, our state mandated testing data, and how we're doing across the board with our students in terms of attendance, discipline, all of it. And then we refine those goals and actions, again, with our stakeholder engagement. We call that actually educational partners now. Stakeholder has morphed into a different name. And that's when we bring our LCAP committee back and talk about any revisions. And then, of course, we're here in June to present to you and have a public hearing, then adopt. So the highlights this year, we were really pleased to see that a lot of the actions that had come out of our committee work did support our students, especially in the area of counseling. We found that our tiered intervention supports made a big difference with our math and reading. Tiered intervention supports have to do with both tiered 1 and 2 in the classroom through writer's workshop, reader's workshop, cognitively guided instruction, mathematics practices, and so forth. And also with tier 3, our more intensive beyond the classroom interventions. We were able to introduce teacher collaboration time. This was new in our elementary schools, embedded in the school day, where teachers work together on behalf of their students. We also had quite a few professional learning options with consultants coming in and supporting teachers in the classroom and beyond the classroom. Student enrichment, I want to show off here our fabulous music program. We also had family dance nights and art nights, so a great offering. For challenges, we're still addressing those learning gaps. In reading and mathematics, we're seeing that we haven't been able to totally close that gap, although we feel like we're getting closer. And we also were looking at our children's emotional needs. When we looked at the California Healthy Kids Survey, we would have liked to have seen a higher score on students feeling connected at their schools. Now, this wasn't surprising, seeing that we were just coming back from a year of distance learning, but we are looking for higher scores with that. And also we want to see more increased family. We want to see an increase in family and caregiver engagement and partnership in our school district.
Sorry, I have a question.
Okay.
If you could go back to the previous slide. The LCAP challenges, the first one that's there, address the learning gaps in reading and math. Gaps to what?
Gaps between students, and that, I'm sorry, I wasn't clear about that. That is, we're seeing a learning gap for students who are identified as low income and students who are not identified as low income. So we do see a gap in our learning. We've seen it for years, and we've been working to close it. We have made great progress in that. We think next year we're going to see a much smaller gap in that.
What's the gap though? And I think the question is, what is that related to? So it's a gap, but
It's a
compared
gap.
to California standards, compared to.
No, within our own
with
district.
our own.
Yeah.
For the standards that we've set in the district. Okay.
Using our local, thank you, using our local assessments. We also have historical data from state mandated tests that show that gap as well.
Is this new? You say we've been working towards closing this gap, or it's a goal that we keep working
It is a
toward?
goal we keep working toward. It's not a new challenge.
Okay,
It's
thanks.
ongoing.
You also mentioned the California Healthy Kids survey. I was thrilled to see the positive momentum there. That was almost alarming in the past, in the pandemic, understandably, and what progress, still in the pandemic, but great progress this past year, and that was great to see.
Right, and I would say with increasing family and caregiver engagement, Dr. Ingram, our diversity, equity, and inclusion specialist coordinator, is putting together a family engagement program for next year that would align all of the workshops in our district so that parents have access across the district to whatever's going on in our schools on behalf of students, both for educational purposes and for social emotional needs. But we're doing this as a way of increasing not just engagement, but partnership, so parents really feel a part of their students' learning. And then finally, our next steps. Tonight we have our public hearing and then board approval on the 27th. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments or questions in this public hearing?
Well, I just wanted to say that I'm thrilled to see the new steps for next year around the parent advisory group and additional educational opportunities for the families and ways for them to engage, because I think that is a place where we have room to grow, and I'm looking forward to seeing what happens there, and including with our special education families. So thank you.
Well, and to build on what Rebecca just said, that's one of the, I think, distinguishing factors of the Weisburn School District is this ongoing reach to our community and to our parents, to offer them ways to be involved and to participate in the learning that their students are engaging. It's one of our hallmark goals, and I know the staff does a great job defining those goals and reaching for them. I really appreciate that too. Yeah.
A lot of work in this document. A lot of reading in this document. I encourage you to read it. It's well done. Tells a lot of good story about our district. Well done. Further comments? No. We will close this public hearing at 6:13 and move on to item 3.4, the public hearing on the 2022-23 budget, opened at 6:13. Nice.
Well, good evening, everyone. Look forward to giving you an overview on the proposed 22-23 Weisburn Unified School District budget. Get that chart set. Flip through. Feel free to ask questions as we go along should you have them. First chart just reminds us that building a budget is in fact building a puzzle, and it takes a lot of people involved, from the board through administration, through our school sites program and department managers, and of course guidance from the superintendent, of course. I do want to thank Shelley Fernandez. She has been absolutely instrumental in this process. She understands the system that you use through LACO, and she understands the flow of how programs work and are funded in the district. She's just been absolutely terrific to work with. Just by way of introduction, go to the next slide, please. Weisburn has 8 individual funds, essentially 8 different checkbooks it works out of, general fund being the primary operating fund of the district. Just so people understand, it's not one revenue stream. We're actually tracking upwards of 58 different revenue streams throughout the course of the year in the general fund. And of course, we're tracking numerous expenditure categories. So there's a lot of work that goes into this budget and to maintain it throughout the year. School districts, unlike corporate industries, if we go to the next slide, please. Practice fund accounting. Fund accounting is a little bit different than normal corporate accounting. Every fund has its purpose. Every fund has its own rules and reasons for existence. In fact, as I mentioned, it is very much like a separate checkbook. But we're going to focus on the general fund because the general fund is, in fact, the main operating fund of the district. So I'll start with that just to say on the next slide, general fund not only is chief operating fund, but it accounts for all the ordinary operations of the district, all the transactions except those designated by law, and ensures that you separate those restricted programs from the unrestricted programs. As we get into the budget here, we'll spend a little bit of time on both the restricted and unrestricted side, and then bring them together into fund balance and show you how that all interworks. District budget is in fact based on a whole bunch of assumptions, some of which I shared with you last time that we were together and also included in your packet. And this is usually and often in the absence of a state budget. So some guesswork's in play here. And this year is probably from a dollar standpoint, bigger than any year we've seen in terms of guesswork. And I'll allude to that and talk to that just shortly. Timeline of events getting through the budget building process. As you know, the governor released a May revision, which had an update from his January proposal. That was May the 13th. Our legislators in California are obligated to send a budget to the governor by the 15th, or they don't get paid anymore. So they passed Senate Bill 154 and said, hey, here's a budget, but we're still going to negotiate. So they're still getting paid and they're still negotiating. That's the moral to that story. We're here June 23rd, public hearing. We expect to come back next week to have budget adoption by the board. I do look forward, as the board should as well, since there's about $14 billion still in play in negotiation in the legislature that could be extremely meaningful for the district, to consider updating the budget 45 days after the state adopts its budget. And then, of course, there are a few things that go on to close out the school year and then bring your first interim report for the new school year. So let's roll back into kind of the higher picture of the current year in California revenues. A couple of phrases in this chart. The top paragraph, I think, says it all. From school services, the governor introduced a spending plan for $300 billion in the budget, looking forward into the budget year. And he provides money for schools to provide relief from rising inflation and all of the costs that we incur, including homeless and all of the issues that are here. The interesting part about this is from his January projection to the May projection, it increased a mere $55 billion. California economy is doing really well, apparently. Now, the good news is a good portion of that money, because of Proposition 98, will come to education, roughly 40%. And so you see kind of the breakdown. I won't go through the whole table, just maybe the bottom line that compares January to May performance, both in the current year and for the budget year. And you can see that total minimum guarantee on balance across these 2 years has grown $19 billion since January. So that's a lot of new money to spread around after 4 months of not anticipating. But that's good for education, so we look forward to that. Now, dropping down, taking that little bit of statewide look at the amount of money that's floating around that we might see. We build our budget based on a number of internal and external planning assumptions, which I've shared with you. As I mentioned, I just did want to touch on them again briefly. The big ones, obviously, our enrollment in ADA. We're forecasting flat ADA enrollment. The district is down about 3 points in its attendance. We look forward, hopefully, to a pleasant surprise as we come back to school, more post-COVID, and kids return to school at a higher level than they have been. Teacher ratios are established as a core, but the district also provides for teachers to avoid combination classes. And so that's over and above the ratio, but there is a base ratio assumed. There are 3 certificated staff members that will be departing the district, and this is coming out of the restricted side for the most part as a result of the winding down of some of the COVID-related funds that's been taken into account the budget. We do more on the classified staff with some technical support from OT and other therapists are anticipating continuing contract support rather than in-house employee support for those services. We have a target, as just explained on the LCFF supplemental, that is funding the LCAP for improved and enhanced services, about $1.6 million. Routine restricted maintenance is funded to its mandatory 3%. That's about $1 million. And of course, we have other ongoing provisions for health and welfare. Our SELPA has given us an update on their projected revenues, so that's included in the budget. And of course, we have continuing increases in PERS and STRS retirements, which effectively reduces the COLA that's provided to the district by about 2.25%. So moving on to the local control funding formula, just share with you, yes, we do anticipate a 6.56% COLA increase moving into 22-23. The base grant amounts are shown here for your reference. I won't go through those, but it's important to note that the governor in his May revise also proposed and is not included yet in this budget, $2.1 billion increase to the LCFF base revenue rates. That's being referred to in some corners as a super COLA. And also an $8 billion one-time discretionary block grant, which our math is accurate here, may be worth as much as $3 million to Wiseburn Unified School District one-time funds. And so that's certainly something to look forward to. We know that those two programs, along with the ELO program, which is a $4.4 billion program, are still under negotiation with the legislature. And so big chunk of money still sloshing around, waiting to be determined how it's going to be provided to schools. So with all of that background, we'll just get into the numbers. I won't spend a lot of time. These numbers come basically right off of the summary sheet of your general fund document, which is about 15 pages back in your packet after the letter and some of the exhibits. So you can refer to that. But revenue summary on the unrestricted side, again, the general fund budget is broken up into restricted, unrestricted. The unrestricted side generates your reserves, and so you want to pay attention to that. Also pays for all discretionary activities and instruction in the district. Restricted side pays for things that have strings attached to them that the legislature or the federal government is mandating that we provide, and we've agreed to take their money. Good news is looking forward in revenue sources on the unrestricted side, we're seeing, if you go to the bottom right corner, you'll see a change between our estimated actuals and the budget projected for next year, positive of just under $300,000, $284,000. The bulk of that's coming from LCFF resources, but there is a knockdown in local revenues associated with the E-rate program. There could be a pleasant surprise on that. We reapply every year, but we don't want to over forecast. So good news on that front. Yes.
Sorry, just when you say that, meaning that it wasn't factored, the E-rate was not factored in, any E-rate.
We had $1 million worth of E-rate, give or take. $1 million came into E-rate this year that's credited onto our books and knocked that down by roughly a quarter. And so you see that showing up here. Now we can reapply as E-rate application opens for the coming year and perhaps recoup that, but that's uncertain.
It's actually the first time I've heard, I know we spend a consultant $35,000 a year to get E-rate application or so, and it's turned into $1 billion. I'm not sure I heard that before.
I think it's less, much less than that.
It's about, I think we, at a top, it would be $6,000.
For the consultants, but oh, then I'm exaggerating that cost. Okay, great. Thank you. Definitely. Oh my gosh.
And so on balance, looking forward, unrestricted revenues look slightly improved at a very conservative level, given the other programs I talked about are not included. Conservative level are in a good place going forward. Looking at the expenditures now that are matched to those revenues on the unrestricted side, you see generally increases across all expenditure categories totaling up to about $1.3 million difference between our estimated actuals projection on the unrestricted side and the budget for next year. Some of that has to do particularly in salaries with step and column, but also the return of some of our staff who have been funded this year on COVID, moving back into the general fund. The board may or may not be aware, for instance, that we funded 90% of our health clerks at our schools. Their salaries were paid for out of COVID grants in this last year. 25% of our assistant principals were paid. So they're coming back into the general fund. STRS and PERS increases in the 3,000 categories, along with benefit increases, are obviously a bump there as well. So let's move over to the restricted side, same chart. What we see here is a change in the restricted side that has to do with a knockdown, if you will, from where we were, from $9.6 million estimated actuals in terms of revenue to $7.2 million, almost 7.3. And that's generally because we're not going to see the flow of COVID-related funds and other supportive programs from the federal government, the state that we anticipated seeing. I will tell you this will change dramatically once the state budget is issued and whatever funds come down out of the $14 billion I referenced comes to the district. Also on the restricted side, the expenditures matching those revenues, estimated actuals $14 million, budgets at $12 million. So to match reduced funds, there's reduced expenditures, which is always good practice. You can see the knockdowns come, as I mentioned, much like the increases in certificated classified salaries from people moving back into unrestricted. They're moving off of unrestricted. So you see that transfer here, net of step and column and some employee movement. And then books and supplies, traditionally, when we adopt the budget, those numbers are low because those plans oftentimes still have to be developed. So with that, I want to step back for a moment and take you back one report previously. I want to take you back to second interim. This chart explains is a comparison from 21, 22, second interim estimated actuals. We're no longer spanning over 2 years. We're just looking at ending this year and where we were last time we talked financially at second interim. You see over on the right-hand side, the change between the big picture items, and this is after revenues and expenses have been netted out. So we're just talking about surplus or deficit on the unrestricted, restricted side, and then in total. And so what you see is on the right-hand column, top, the change, you see a positive number moving our estimated actuals to a higher restricted surplus of $1.5 million. And as we've shared with the board, we've spent a lot of time realigning some of our expenditures and some of our COVID-related programs. This is exactly what we were trying to accomplish. Conversely, on the restricted side, you see a shift of $2 million. It's actually a negative number, more on the restricted side. So good news there. On the overall surplus deficit is cleaned up in estimated actuals, a little bit higher, but still positive. Change in fund balance, you see at the bottom line, an improvement on the unrestricted side of $1.758 million. That's exactly what we've been working for, is to shore up the unrestricted side of the ledger. So good news there. We put off in the box, you can see a disclosure on Measure CL. At second interim, we were tracking $1.2 million. Now we believe estimated actuals will be 1.4 to carry over. And we have a spend plan for that to work it down over the next couple of years. Now we'll go back to spanning years again. So we've caught you up from second interim to estimated actuals. Now we'll go from estimated actuals back to budget again after netting out revenues and expenditures. And I'll just go straight down to the bottom line. If we look at the unrestricted side in the lower right-hand corner, you'll see a bold number of negative $407,944. That is the deficit that we project right now in the budget as it's laid out for the unrestricted side of the budget. I believe, as the board is aware, we have a spend down plan in the current year of $600,000 in the parcel tax. So if you were to net out the parcel tax and the expenditures that go with it, you might say that your regular operating budget, absent parcel tax, would have a $200,000 surplus. So basically a balanced budget in that respect. But again, I would caution that we have built in the revenues and COLA here, but we know we have not settled with labor unions. So there will be some more costs that come in and impact this next time you look at a financial report and have settled with the unions.
I think to that point, and the governor's budget not knowing unequivocally we'll need a 45-day revise here.
I can't imagine a situation where you wouldn't want the most current numbers after this washes out. Okay, so that's the budget, at least in a top overview. Let's talk about multi-year projections, because as you know, the county superintendent of schools and state law mandates that we maintain a 3% reserve for economic uncertainties. And so after all the surpluses, all the revenues, expenditures, surpluses, and deficits, we've got to have some money in the bank. And so we have produced a multi-year for you based on, again, conservative approach. And you can see the revenues, you can see expenditures as we've laid them out based on where we're at this year in our staffing. So no significant changes across the 3 years in headcounts or staffing ratios or anything of that nature. And what you see is in the middle of the chart, you see excess or deficiency deficit of revenues, small deficits in 22-23, 23-24, and then a surplus in 24-25. This is a different multi-year projection from what you saw at second interim, and it is primarily because of the increased COLAs that came out of the May revise. So more revenues helps the picture. Obviously, this will get more updated as we get into a 45-day income, a 45-day update. I would like to just call your attention to, we have broken out the fund balance. You see the fund balances remain around the $7 million level through this forecast period. But as you look at them, you see the restricted balances stay fairly high to the extent in 24-25 right now, we're forecasting almost $4.8 million of the $7.6 million fund balance is restricted. So those are dollars intended for program. They're not available for discretionary uses, generally speaking. They will serve kids, they will serve the district, but they're essentially tied to whatever requirements the feds and the state have put on. Measure CL funds are identified, and you can see, in fact, the spend down plan there as we get to the end of this year, we go from 1.4 to $818,000, and then the second year, 209, and then eventually to zero until that carryover balance is depleted. That time we'll still be receiving annual parcel tax, but it will be a spend as you go. And the intent is not to accumulate a balance. And so that leaves an unrestricted unassigned balance, and it also leaves your 3% And the bottom line is your 3% is met with excess over and above that, those one-time monies. So good looking base forecast here for whatever comes next.
Quick clarification, just so I make sure that I'm reading it right, is the unrestricted unassigned is an addition to the reserve. It's a line item.
Correct. It is truly discretionary reserves to be spent however the board would authorize, but it is one-time money. With that, if there aren't any questions on the budget, I just want to touch on other funds very quickly. I have one page on other funds because the district has these 8 different checkbooks. And so I've captured the other 7 on this chart. I won't go through it in extensive detail, but I will touch on cafeteria special reserve fund. All balances are relatively stable. There are expenditure plans for 5 out of the 7 funds. I will tell you the cafeteria special reserve fund, we have not yet programmed in either the revenues or the cost for the new breakfast requirements. As we get our own plan internally on what that's going to cost, we can match that up with what we already have for breakfast estimates and bring that to you in an update in the future. And just down at the bottom, other enterprise funds, as you know from previous conversations, we had talked about incorporating other enterprise fund into the general fund. At this point in time, we will continue it as a separate fund as it is the ECE program, but over time, as universal pre-K gets younger and younger, I would expect that this will dissipate. You'll notice that there's large negative numbers in those columns, which is very strange, but because it's a fund nature of the fund balance, it has to capture its own accrued benefits for post-employment benefits for those staff that serve that program. So in the general fund, those dollars are kept in side notes in the back of the fund. They're not incorporated into the fund, but they are in 63. So otherwise you're on balance with all of these funds, and fund 63 you are, however, subsidizing as informed the board. There's a $150,000 transfer from the general fund to support that program going forward this year. With that, just some closing comments. I believe I've touched on all of this. The 21-22 estimated actuals, 22-23 budget reflect alignment with restricted resources. I think we should all feel really good about that. The district's budget's been developed with a conservative methodology, so there's more upside than downside, frankly. I look forward to that, as I'm sure you do. The budget is a placeholder because I'll keep coming back. There's $14 billion floating around out there that hopefully Weisburn's going to get a good chunk of, and that would be a good thing. So we'd want to update at the appropriate time, as was mentioned. The general fund unrestricted ending balance includes a Measure CL carryover. I think we made that clear. We'll not belabor with that further. We've met our requirements in the multi-year financial projections. Second interim, you may recall in the letter that came to the board, the county was asking us for a fiscal solvency plan. I do not believe that's required now because we're showing that we're making our reserves. We'll have continuing discussion. And then there's a note, as I've mentioned throughout the presentation, there's a number of things not included here that we look forward to bringing to you in the next update.
Greg, is it safe to say that this fiscal stability plan or financial stability plan that was at one point required, that the county reached out to us, that our budget basically serves that purpose now?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely correct. At the point in time we gave them a budget, it was a bit on the edge. They were uncertain about the trajectory of finances in the district, and it showed in our financials, frankly. We've been able to stabilize that. And so with 3% plus in the bank over 3 years, that forecast should belie any concern at the moment about fiscal stability plan.
Thanks. A couple questions. This is all good news. A couple questions on the COLAs. Are those come from school services? This is all good news. That what's permeating in my head is all this conversation of possibility of recession and what that might mean for us. And are these, I know these projections don't include that. Any comments?
Well, yeah, you prepare for the worst and hope for the best sort of situation. Right now, there is a whole windfall coming. It reminds me a little bit of back in 2006-07, Governor Schwarzenegger had just a flush budget. We all know what happened after that. Hopefully that doesn't happen again. But we do have to always have an eye on what would we do in an adverse situation. And so you want to build a budget that's robust and can withstand that if there is a downturn, however significant or insignificant.
And if you knew this one, you'd be, again, prognosticating with accuracy. But if you know, I know there was pending legislation in Congress regarding the gun legislation that could mean money for schools. I don't know if you have any idea, or we have any idea what that could mean for the local school district.
I really don't. I've heard the same thing. I think that most of the board members heard that there's a bill out there, but I don't think it's mature enough yet to be able to estimate the kind of revenue that might be associated with it for a district or even funded through the bill, to be honest with you. Or if it'll even pass.
Good news, and feels like there's so many unknowns right now.
There is, but the upside is the unknowns are good and we can control, hopefully, by working with our labor partners, what we don't know internally in the district. Look forward to coming back to you on Monday with budget.
Appreciate it. No further comments or questions. We will end this public hearing at 6:36. Thank you very much.
Before we close, we just want to check the.
Yeah, were there comments from the public?
On either LCAP or the budget.
At this time, I don't have any comments. If there are any comments, please raise your hand. So far, nothing.
Thank you, and forgot they're not just in the room. Well, that ends our public hearings, so thank you. Now move to discussions, item 4, and the first 4.1 is the presentation of the facilities master plan update by Jomei Lau and from LPA.
I think she'll be showing up here on the screen. I just want to thank Jomei and Rick, the team at LPA. I've said this again and again, just really professional in putting together our plan, putting together presentations for this board, also for our community. Really looking forward to seeing the final draft, or have seen the final draft of the update that will be brought to the board today. So without further ado, I think we're sliding her over into our screen. Is that right, Jason?
Yeah, she just has to turn on her video.
Okay.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
We can. Welcome, Jomei.
Thank you. Great. Right. Good evening, Board of Trustees, Superintendent, staff, and community members. We'll be presenting about the facilities master plan update. And okay, and who's sharing? Am I sharing my screen or it's already up there?
Jomei, I don't know if it's you. I thought it was you sharing it, but we're seeing a presentation here.
Okay, awesome. I don't think that's me though, but go ahead. I guess next slide.
Okay, go ahead. We can share.
Jason, is that you sharing?
Yeah, I'm not gonna allow her to share.
Jomei, would it be better for you to share, just so you can go through it, or do you want us to just manage it?
I can do it. Hold on.
All right.
I can figure it out. Hold on. Okay. All right. Do you see it?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Wonderful. Okay. Advance the slides. So this is kind of going to be a recap of our last board workshop. I'm going to go through the results of the board workshop prioritization, total program costs, just a recap of what was changed in this update, and then I guess next steps would be the adoption of this 2022 FMP update. Okay, and just a reminder of, we went through a facilities master plan process with extensive engagement, March of 2019 through July 2020. And there were, approximately 120 or more than that participants in that. And we did extensive, we had online surveys. We also had multiple facilities master plan committee meetings, some town halls, principal one-on-one meetings. We walked all of the school sites, and then sort of the global pandemic hit, and everything. Some of the things might have changed and things like that. So the district had decided to kind of re-engage this year for this in January, and kind of do an update to the process, and just to make sure that the vision was still in alignment of where they wanted to head towards. Okay. And so that this update process occurred from February this year and through June. And then in this process, we had multiple meetings with district leadership, as well as one large town hall meeting in which community members and some staff participated in that, in which we reevaluated some of the changes or the updates to the master plans for each of the sites, as well as updated all of the costs to 2022 dollars, and also we did a prioritization activity at the meeting. And then all of this information, as well as the previous prioritization information, was presented to the Board of Trustees, and also a prioritization activity was conducted at that meeting as well. Okay, I wanted to share with you the results of the board prioritization after taking into account all of the data points. And these are listed in terms of priority from greatest need from greatest need up at the top. On the thermometer here on the right side, it's actually from the bottom up. So we were kind of filling a thermometer of dollars to see how far we could get. And, you know, the board actually prioritized without too much, the dollar amount is not set yet. And so the board just sort of prioritized in terms of greatest need versus dollar amount. And as you can see here, the top priorities here are safety and security, and administration and staff support and student counseling, these improvements because they were related to security and safety, and then modernization, making sure that basic needs of learning spaces are met, and that was sort of seen as part of, you know, providing safe environments, learning environments for students as well. And then a lot of discussion about exterior play spaces and play fields and providing that as a resource for the community as well as the district, and then technology, and you can kind of read the rest of those. Any questions here? Okay. And just a recap of the from the Facilities Master Plan Committee prioritization, the top priorities that came out of that town hall was exterior play spaces, play fields and hard courts, makerspace, STEM, science, art, and elective spaces, outdoor learning environments and quads, as well as safety and security. So it's very much in alignment with also what the board prioritized in terms of the final prioritization of greatest needs. And then we also prioritized by site, and at the FMP committee meeting, the play fields at 135th and Aviation were prioritized. 138th Street School, which is the site that had the least amount of work done or modernization, or it's the oldest of all of the school sites. Cabrillo Elementary School, and then Dana Middle School were the top priorities there. Okay. So I just wanted to kind of summarize the costs that were also updated. The costs are presented in 2022 dollars, and you know, as moving forward, you know, there would need to be escalation and things like that accounted for. So things that are excluded from the budget include the following, like offsite work, utilities. There could be like temporary housing or portables brought in during construction. So those are excluded from the cost. And so total need here, you can see here at the bottom is about like $115 million in terms of comprehensive work done to all of the school sites and all the needs that were identified during this process. Okay, this is just kind of looking at it a different way as by site, how much dollars were allotted in the budget for each of these, the school sites and the work identified there. And again, the totals down here. So this just kind of allows the district to utilize this very detailed cost analysis and spreadsheet to, as funding comes in, to be able to choose projects moving forward. Okay. And working with the district, there is some state eligibility and modernization identified, and it's estimated to be about like 4.5 million available. And as we plan for projects, you know, our kind of our rule of thumb really is to, depending on the dollar amount for bond funding, the district goes for, we never want to plan for more than 2/3 of the project cost for in terms of work, because there's always, you know, the 1/3 of unknowns and escalation and all of the items that were excluded that I mentioned previously. Okay, and I do have all of the diagrams here, but I know everyone has seen them, so I'm not sure if we want to go through this or just kind of
I think,
skim through them or skip them, or
yeah, I think unless there's questions from the board, I think we could just skip through them. Thank you for that presentation.
all right.
Any questions for Joe May?
Just flip through very quickly. So those are all the sites updated. Yep.
Just a quick question, Jimmy, it's Rebecca.
Yes.
So with the projections at the end about costs and things like that, it looks like if you compare that to the prioritization list, we would get basically at the 66 million, which is sort of the estimate if you had 98 million in revenues coming in, that you would get through some of the systems, section 8, but not much beyond that. Is that what you're estimating?
Yeah, just depending on the amount that the district was going for. I think there was a range between, like from that other side, it was a range.
98 and 120.
Yeah, 90 to 120. So, so I think I've kind of marked somewhere down here, but 80 or 80 so million, right? Yeah, so around after the around.
That red line is if we went for 120, right?
Yes, yeah, the higher amount, right. And if it was the lower, it'd be the 66 around the systems, yeah. And it's important to note also, I forgot to mention that, you know, within the categories, I have broken it down by site, and those were not, within the category, it was not prioritized, and I think that's up to the district as we move into implementation phase, right? That you would kind of see what would be the greatest needs by site, right? Drill into more detail, but these were prioritized more by categories.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Joe May. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Appreciate the presentation and the work getting here.
Great. Thank you so much.
All right. Well, while Joe May is moving her materials, let's go to 4.2 community service update. And Dr. Silvers, let me turn to you.
Sure. Yeah, we've been definitely very lucky to partner with Clifford Moss to do some public outreach related to our facilities needs and related to just the work that we need to do to gather input from our community related to what our needs are and what the perceived needs are maybe from the community. So in so doing, Laura has really helped lead this process, helped gather information. I believe today she'll present us some of the findings, the initial findings. The district did send out a mailer as well as some short video clips are live or going to be live. And so we're able to get some feedback. Thank you, Laura.
Good evening, members of the board, staff, and community members. I'm also joined here with Tom Clifford, my colleague, who's been working on this project with us as well. Would you like me to share my screen?
Please.
And for those of you that we're reintroducing ourselves to, we're Clifford Moss, public engagement and consulting firm. Laura Crotty, vice president with the firm, been doing this work for about 10 years. And it's been a real pleasure working with your community and your staff and you as a board. So I'm gonna dive in right now to respect your time. And because I know there's a lot on the agenda for tonight. So as some of you are aware, you obviously, a great presentation from LPA just now. You not only were listening to your community with your facilities master planning and holding a town hall, et cetera, but we've actually been engaging in a two-way conversation on, what does your community think about your facility priorities? Whether it's an HOA meeting or a one-on-one opinion leader conversation, working with Erica on your regular e-news updates, a mailer that went out to your community along with a email that went out asking folks for that same information, and then online engagement asking folks to please take that survey. And then you as a board also before then invested in statistically scientific polling from your community. And so all of what we've been discussing with your community is surrounding what we've heard and looking for anecdotal feedback on that. So right now on your website, the survey is still up. So if anybody from the public would still like to take it, they are more than welcome to. That was sent out to almost 6,000 households. The email went to over 5,000 individual community member email addresses. And this was sent to the district on Monday. Since then, now you have 292 survey responses to date. And so, as I mentioned, you did the scientific poll work with FM3 that gave you the data statistically on where you stand and where your community stands. And so this is more of anecdotal, qualitative feedback, but it's real time what your community members are telling you. And so I'm sure you are not surprised to see that once again, retaining and attracting quality teachers is the top vote getter from those that opted into the survey. We really see in your data, in your comments, in the ways that community members talk about the school district that teachers are so loved and invested in. And I've watched some of your previous board meetings and know that that's very true in just the way that you talk about your teachers. And then I'm sure you're also not surprised to see that safety and security was number 2, followed by repair urgent basic needs such as leaky roofs, rusty plumbing, and HVAC facilities. The rest I can go into detail more, but I will keep moving again to respect your time. And so before I leave this slide, you can sort of read, I just wanted to also share with you some of the themes that we are seeing in the survey feedback, in the comments that we're seeing from your community. So the themes that we're seeing are safety and security is important. Support our teachers. Comments about sports, sports fields, sports facilities, outdoor play. Themes about mental health, investing in mental health for students. A lot of comments just reaffirming you as a district to continue to focus on STEAM, science, technology, engineering, art, and math. And then some questions and concerns from the community that maybe aren't as internally part of the school district, such as teachers or parents. And so on the safety and security comments that we're seeing a lot, likely due to just, recent events, the survey went out recently. Please invest in the safety of our children. Safety for teachers and students is the top priority. Supporting our teachers anywhere from making sure that they have clean classrooms to some comments on, invest in their salaries. Sports comments were, please make sure to have sports fields available for our students, to sports fields and facilities are important. And then in terms of comments and questions, a few such as, don't we have the newest schools in the South Bay already? And didn't we just pass a bond already to deal with our facility needs? And so we really see a range of comments and questions from your community. So the process right now and for tonight is you as a board are reviewing the bond resolution. You are not making a decision tonight. That will be later in the summer. The The state filing deadline to place a measure on the ballot is August 12th. And of course, you know, the election day is November 8th. And so I'm just going to preview what David Kasnoka is going to walk through with you, which is the actual legal document for your Q&A for tonight. So that is included with the total bond amount of 98 million. It also includes the 75-word ballot question, the project list, and legal considerations, and of course, the resolution. And so in that, you know, in addition to that, you'll see the conditions, the provisions, you'll also see the tax rate statement and the Prop 39 requirements. And then this is just a reminder that once a measure is filed, if you as a board do choose to place a measure on the ballot, the district can provide information only. The district cannot advocate for or against a measure on the ballot. And of course, paid employees cannot advocate on district time. However, they can volunteer on their own time. Okay, I will open it up for questions.
Hi, thanks a lot for the briefing. This is Joanne. You know, as I filled out the survey myself, it was really hard to choose between some of the priorities because the first three that you showed in our results all seem, you know, really important. So as a community member, as I took the, you know, the survey and filled it out for ourselves, it was really hard to choose between the first two. To make one of them number one and one of them number two. So I really respect that the folks who've responded to the survey are probably facing those same sorts of tugs as they absolutely have to make a choice between, you know, sort of the order of priority of things. So I respect that a lot. The other thing I really appreciate is that we're looking at the requirements in the community and the priorities from in a lot of different ways. We're coming up with information that agrees across these different methods of asking people to identify priorities. So that's really encouraging, because when we look at the results from the survey that went out here, you know, for the presentation we just had before this one, everything ties together. So it's encouraging to see that we don't have conflicting priorities. We really have a definition of priorities that agree across the different ways that we've asked people to identify these needs. So that's really encouraging to know that the priorities are pretty straightforward, and I would say the community that has voiced an opinion is in pretty much agreement across those ways. So I think that's really good to know. Anyway, thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Yeah, I was just going to echo what Joanne said, that I noticed the same thing looking across these priorities and looking across the facilities master plan that we just discussed, that there's very similar top issues that both the board and the community identified and that the community is identifying through this survey. So I look forward to continuing that conversation. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Just one question, Laura, regarding any distinctions in our findings from others at this time in terms of feedback, priorities. They are in alignment with our assurances, which is good to see as well. Your thoughts, please.
Yeah, I would say that I wasn't surprised to see in this more anecdotal survey that retain and attract quality teachers was by far the number one priority, because when you did the poll with FM3, that was the number one priority as well. And I do see that to be different than some of the other districts that we work with. So the fact that your community members that may not have children in schools still love and appreciate and see so much value in investing and keeping your great, excellent teachers that you have is, I think it's special to Wiseburn.
To that point, thank you. Do we have demographics on the respondents as to most of the respondents parents with children? Are they long-time residents? Do we have any breakdown of that at all?
Yeah, so this is just an anonymous Google survey that folks can opt into. In terms of the actual, demographics of all of your voters, when we look at the age of those, about 20% are 65 and older, and about 15% are aged 55 to 64. So you're looking at about 35% aged 55 and older. And usually we see about 15% of all voters are parents in the district. They could also be parents in other schools, but generally we see that with yours as well.
Thank you very much. Dr. Silvers, anything else you'd like here?
No, I actually think that Tom Clifford's on too, so I apologize, Tom, that I didn't introduce you as well. I thought Laura was representing you today, but anyway, thank you, Tom and Laura, for the support. Definitely, I don't know, Tom, if you had anything you wanted to add.
Nope. No, I think that was a great presentation. I think we're in line and on target and moving nicely on this bond measure. So I look forward to the board's continued deliberations on it. And no offense taken, Blake.
All right, thank you, Tom. Thank you, Laura. Appreciate the presentation.
Thank you.
We'll move now to 4.3, current market conditions and current state of WSD bonds, and our bond advisor, Tim Carty. Jason just confirming he's with us.
Not as immediate as the.
Okay, can everyone see me?
Hello, Tim.
Hey, Tim, how you doing, Tim?
Hi, good. Sorry, it took me a minute to get my microphone and camera organized. Well, anyway, good evening. I'm Mr. President, members of the board, Tim Carty from Piper Sandler, your financial advisor. I thought it would be helpful to comment on a couple of items before we get to David Kaznoka and the walkthrough of the potential resolution calling for a November 2022 bond measure. As Laura pointed out, in the ballot materials, we will need to identify the amount of bonds which we would like the community to approve. And then embedded within that, if you will, is a financial plan that we start the process with, can be modified, can be adjusted over time after a bond measure is successful. But there needs to be a plan such that we know that the tax rate that we suggest to voters during a bond campaign will be the cost and disclose to them, in fact, can support the bond amount, which the board ultimately selects. So I wanted to make a couple of comments about that subject. I did have 3 brief slides that I think Wendy or someone on the district side was going to show for me. So let me just show you this. So in the poll, we tested, if you look at sort of the second column from the right, we tested a $124 million bond amount. Now keep in mind, that was before we had the LPA Facilities Master Plan, which was just shared, that had about $115 million project amount. So we tested $124 million. And then if you go to the bottom blue stripe, at a $30 per 100,000 projected tax rate, again, 100,000 per assessed valuation. Even though $60 per 100,000 is the limit that a unified school district can request, in the poll, we tested $30 and 124 million. Sort of the base case for a California school district in terms of accessing the funds is about 10 years with a draw every 4th year, year 1, year 4, year 7, year 10. Each series of bonds would have a 30-year term. Total length of tax, start to finish, would be about 38 years. Now, we know interest rates have risen significantly in the last 6 months. So we already factored in current interest rates into this $124 million plus a cushion in case interest rates rise further, in case the board is interested in that. Now, on the right-hand column, as we've thought about the process, just for consideration, we also showed a $98 million version that would also be supported by the same $30 tax rate per 100,000 if you glance at the bottom blue stripe. Again, 4 draws where we would keep $31 million for the first 2 draws, and then it would be the third and the fourth draw that would be smaller. And what's different is really the length of the tax. Whereas we would need 38 years, start to finish, to repay the $124 million, it's 30 years to repay the $98 million, which would make sense. It's a smaller bond amount. None of these amounts are locked in stone, and that's obviously a decision that the board will make. And it could be a number different from either of these two, but sort of the two that we've looked at as a consulting group have been the $124 million was tested in the poll, and then what a number really lower than 100 million or $98 million would look like. So I wanted to show this to the board members.
Tim, before you leave this is Neil, these are, I'm assuming, are based on an estimated interest rate?
Yes, they're based on an estimated interest rate, which is certainly a lot higher than we would have used about 6 months ago. So it's not only that, Neil, but we also put in a cushion. So we took today's interest rates and added about 1/4 to 0.5% on top of that. So we thought that was prudent. Obviously, as once we pass a bond and we get into the various draws, if interest rates are higher or lower, we can always upsize bond draws or downsize bond draws. The voters will not vote on this. The timing and the phasing, whether we have 4 draws, 3 draws, 5 draws, the timing of the draws, the amounts of the draws, that's subject to future board decisions. But as a planning tool for right now, we're using today's very high interest rates plus a cushion on top of that, if that's helpful.
Very helpful, thank you.
Sure. And I can come back to this slide if there's any, when we get to some board questions at the end. So the next slide I wanted to show.
Excuse me, I want to ask one question. This is Joanne.
Oh,
Can you go
sure.
back to the previous slide?
Yes.
What defines the targeted tax rate? How do you get to that $30 per 100,000? Is that a goal? Is that defined in some way by the term? How does that $30 get calculated?
That's a great question. So the way bonds work, there's not a guaranteed tax rate for any school district in California because the tax rate is calculated annually by the County of Los Angeles. And the tax rate for a coming year, for example, LA County right now is going through the process for all the school districts in the county of calculating tax rates for the upcoming fiscal year. How do they do that? It's a fraction where the numerator is the principal and interest coming due for the upcoming year on bonds. And the denominator is the assessed valuation of the school district. So in a document that will be part of the election materials that will be submitted to the County Registrar of Voters, there'll be a 1-page document, which I'll prepare for you, called the tax rate statement. And that's the disclosure to the voters of our best estimate as to the tax rate. And it's only a best estimate. So $30, I would say, is the target. It's the goal. Meaning every time we take a draw, we're calibrating. How close are we to hitting that $30 tax rate? And my experience has been on a big, long tax bill, as long as we're within a very narrow bandwidth, close to $30, then the voters will feel like the school district satisfied and met its promises, its representations to the community. So it's the target. And either of the 124 million or the 98 million can be repaid by a $30 tax rate. And there's really two key assumptions in there. One is interest rates on the bonds. And we've, for planning purposes, as I shared a minute ago, taken today's rates and even went a little higher than that. And the other is the rate of change in property values in the district. And we've used 4% year-over-year rate of change. That's less than the district's historical average. So again, we've tried to be a little bit conservative there. But hopefully that's a satisfactory explanation for how. Now, the interesting thing in Los Angeles County is for Wiseburn Unified School District, there will be one line item on the tax bill. The district has 4 bonds already on the books, and if this passes, it'll be a 5th. So the individual homeowner is not going to see, for each of the 5 elections, let's say this one's successful, the individual tax rate. They're just going to see the gross number, the total. There's a tax book that I have access to, so I know for each individual election what LA County is calculating. But for the recipient of the tax bill, it's the aggregate for any school district of all of the elections. So I know that's a bit of a lengthy answer, but hopefully that's helpful.
Tim, I'm gonna have this is Neil again, I'm gonna have a question. Being the only male here, I guess you could tell it's Neil. Sorry.
Sure, that's all right, Neil.
Yeah, please here. My fault. We're going to, it's our understanding that a couple of these bonds are paying off in the next few years. So at some point, we'd like you to talk about that if you're not already planning.
Yes, and that actually gets into the next 2 slides that I have that might be helpful to round
Can I
out.
ask you just one more question before you move off of that slide?
Sure.
And that
Yes.
is, if we were to take larger draws in, let's say, Series A or B, would that affect the targeted tax rate for those years?
There is some ability to have a larger first draw or a larger first and second draw and stay within $30. That might mean, for example, waiting a year or 2 on the back end for the last draw. Or I mentioned that 4% planning tool for year-over-year rate of change in assessed valuation. Let's say we have 5 or 6%. And we've had that in some years. That would allow larger draws, or lower than expected interest rates. That would allow larger draws. So there's definitely the ability. Could we get all $124 million or $98 million in one draw? No, that would blow the lid off the $30. But there's definitely room to adjust higher or lower in the size of the draws. Remember, whenever we take a bond draw, we have to be able to spend the money within 3 years. That's why we space bond draws out for planning purposes every 3 years, as you can see, essentially a draw every 4th year, 3 years to spend the money. So there's that limitation also on how much we can take in a draw. We have to know that we can spend the funds.
I have 2 questions then, based on what you just said. When you say we have 3 years to spend the money, does that mean literally spend it or commit it?
No, and when David joins later, he may give a more precise answer, but 85% of the funds have to be spent out the door.
Okay.
Within 3 years.
Okay, and then I have another question. Is there any sort of law around the total length of it, in that one line item there, the total length of the tax levy? Is there any loss surrounding those years?
Yes, so, but California law allows an individual bond series or a bond draw actually to go out as far as 40 years. Now, we never do that. We try to keep each individual bond draw to 30 years, like a home loan. So there's no length on, for example, if we took our last bond draw 20 years from now, and that was a 30-year draw, it'd be 50 years, the length of taxation. But I think we try to keep each individual draw to 30 years because that's like a mortgage.
So, okay, so that brings up another question. Okay, so we do the first draw aiming at a $30 per 100,000 tax rate. When we do the next draw, is that another $30 per 100,000, or does that $30 stay constant over the total authorization of that bond?
That is a great question. So the way we structure the repayment of each individual draw, they're not in a sense stacked perfectly on top of one another. They're tailored so that each draw fits with the draws that came before and the draws that are expected to come after, so that the target is a constant $30 per 100,000. So in other words, it's not, let's take the $98 million. It's not $30 for the first 31 million, then another $30 for the second 31 million. It's not that. The $30 is designed to pay for all of these draws, and we customize the way the principal and interest is structured in each draw, as I say, to fit with the ones that came before and the ones expected to come after.
Okay, great, thank you.
Sure. So the next topic that I thought would be helpful is a little refresher about these four previous Weisburn Unified School District elections, or elementary districts that elementary district elections that transferred over the unified district. So there's four of them. One from 1997, one from 2000, one from 2007, and one from 2010. So we show the amount of bonds authorized by the voters in each one. We show the unpaid principal balance. Remember, all the bonds have been sold and accessed from all of these four elections. So we show the amount that was authorized, we show the principal balance. Then we show that, now this wouldn't appear on the tax bill broken out, but I have access to how LA County computed the tax rate for the year we're in, 2021-22, for each of the four elections. And then the final year of the tax levy. So you can see. Now, one of the questions that may come up is, okay, we have the first two bond measures, the oldest ones, and they total a tax of $31.04, but let's just say $30 for rounding purposes. And they come off the books in 2000, after 2025-26. So someone might ask the question, well, why can't we have a new election that does not raise the tax rate, but in a sense just replaces this $30 that's falling off with a new $30? Because sometimes school districts can do that. And one of the things we did a few months ago is took a deeper dive beyond just this and tried to take a look at, for these four elections, if our assessed valuation grew, let's say 4% per year, what might the future taxes be? Okay, remember, not guaranteed, we don't know. It's calculated year to year by Los Angeles County. But what might the future taxes be? Because that would answer the question. Could we do a new bond and say to the community, we're just replacing, we're not adding? And the spoiler alert, the answer is no, we cannot. And if we could go to the next slide, I'm going to show you why. And I'm not trying to give everyone an eye exam here. But column 1 is the district's assessed valuation. It's $11.2 billion right now. Column 2, if we grew that assessed valuation at 4% per year. So now, if you look at column 11, go all the way to the right. That's a possible prospective look at the tax rate for all of these 4 bond measures if we did nothing, no new election. And as you can see, starting in 22, 23, and for about a decade or so, this prospective all-in tax rate is, between $100 and $110. Now, the reason I've got yellow shading is, if you look in column 8, the year after the oldest 2 bonds fall off the books, look what happens to the 2007 election. That tax rate goes up by the same approximately $30 that the old bonds fall off the books. In a sense, the district in 2007 already played the card of replacing the 2 old elections with the 2007 election. And how do we know that? If you look at column 7, the repayment obligation on those 2007 bonds jumps from 3.7 million to 8.2 million. So in a sense, it's already been done that when the 2 oldest elections fall off the books, that $30 gets then consumed by the 2007 election. Then the reason there's a little more yellow shading is the district did it again in 2010. Because when the 2007 election falls off the books, and it has a possible tax rate, again, who knows, but of around $62 or so, that tax is then consumed, if you look at column 10, by an increase in the prospective tax rate for the 2010 election, based on column 9, where the repayment obligation goes from 6.3 million to 15.7 million. And the only reason I'm getting into this level of detail is because there's no scenario for us here in 2022 to have an election where we could say we're just replacing an existing tax. It really needs to be a new bond, new tax, because forward-looking, just based on reasonable projections, who knows what may happen. The tax rate, again, is likely to be something approximating column 11. The district was able to do this in 2007 and 2010 under some old rules that allowed you to have deferred bond payments. You really can't do that anymore. The laws have changed. There was a type of bond called the capital appreciation bond that was used, and the use of that has been limited now. So there were some tools in the toolbox of which the district availed itself back in 2007 and 2010. But it's just kind of a lengthy way, again, of explaining why we really can't say that the $30 coming off the books from the oldest 2 elections can be replaced under a new 2022 election, because the 2007 election is already doing that.
And
So-
you said this, 18, 19 years out. I don't remember what the latter two bonds, when they are paid off. Maybe go back to the prior slide.
Yeah,
They're
2020,
paid off in that time period.
they're paid off, right, Neil, if you go back to slide 3, they're repaid. So the bottom line there is the final termination of the tax rate, the tax rates for all of these 4 elections.
Thank you.
So back to where we started, sort of on the first slide, this would be a new $30 per 100,000 projected tax rate that would be, added on to the maybe $100 to $110 or so. That's for the previous 4. And that's not uncommon. There are a number of school districts in Los Angeles County that have been fortunate to have passed multiple bond elections that have tax rates that are, between $100 and $200 all in. So it's not unusual for a unified school district with multiple elections to have that. So I know that was a lot of information, but hopefully that was helpful in terms of maybe answering some of the questions about the district's existing bonds that some of the board members might have had.
Yeah, it was really helpful. Thank you.
Absolutely. And Tim, one last question. It just struck me is who is auditing the city to ensure they are taxing our community members correctly?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So remember, it isn't the city, it's the county of Los Angeles. Right. So they go through a process where both the auditor controller's office and the assessor's office are involved. They will send to us on your behalf their proposed calculation for the coming year, which is done more in September because of the size of LA County and how many school districts there are and how many bonds there are. It takes the county a little while. Remember, tax bills get mailed out in October. So it's usually a September activity, but we'll get a look at their calculations. And if something stood out as, they forgot a bond or they made a mistake, we will have an opportunity to catch that.
Well, thank you very much.
Sure.
No, I was just gonna say thank you, Tim. I think that maybe, just appreciate the thorough report, and thank you for being here.
Oh, my pleasure. Glad to be
I
helpful.
think we're gonna segue in, Dr. Goldman, to David Kaznoka.
Absolutely.
And
4.4.
should we just go no further
Let's
ado?
do it.
All right. Thanks, Tim.
Just as that's happening for everyone, this is the discussion regarding the resolution of the Board of Trustees regarding ordering an election and establish specifications of the election order. Should we proceed in as such?
Am I audible?
You are indeed. Welcome.
Shall I take it away?
You bet.
So my name is David Kaznoka. I'm a municipal bond attorney with a fair amount of experience. I'm the senior partner at the firm of Stradling, Yoka, Carlson, and Roth. I happen to be in the San Francisco office and have worked with school bonds for over 40 years. So I've prepared this draft resolution that you have before you tonight. It's scheduled to be adopted on July 21st. The resolution is in an effort to fulfill the legal requirement that the district deliver an election order to the registrar of voters by the 88th day prior to election date, November 8th. So the election order takes the form of a resolution. The resolution has 3 component parts to it. The first 5 pages are largely check off the boxes of the various election code and education code requirements to have a valid election order. So if you look at the resolution, The whereas clauses on the first page are the most discretionary of the verbiage in the first 5 pages. And those whereas clauses are an effort to set the stage for what's to follow with the ballot language in the project list. And as a combination of the way the voter opinion survey and the facility master plan read, putting some of those demands in a context to support the need for the bond. So as you read through those whereas clauses, while there's a reason why they're there, I'm open to comment on adding or subtracting from those materials because they're the discretionary part of the preambles. As you turn the pages in the resolution, you can see in section 1, the par amount of the bonds, 98 million. Section 2, the date of the election, November 8th. Section 3 recites many of the education code requirements that are associated with a type of bond election that only requires 55% voter approval. And sections 4 through the end are simply check the box on various statutory requirements. So the real meat of the resolution starts with Exhibit A. So whoever is controlling the slide. Okay, so this is the 75-word ballot question. The law that governs the ballot question to which voters vote yes or no on is the following. It has to be a single sentence ending with a question mark that includes the name of the district, the purposes of the measure, the amount of the measure, the maximum interest rate the bonds can bear, the rate of taxation, the annual revenues generated, and the duration of the tax, and an acknowledgement that this measure is being governed by Proposition 39's audit and oversight requirements. So all of those requirements have to be met in a 75-word single sentence. And really, it's only the first 2.5 lines that are discretionary. Everything else, the words are selected solely to satisfy the legal requirements that I just summarized. So the ballot question has to start with a capital project to upgrade school security, emergency communications, and fire safety systems. And then the real important words to me, and I think to you in the long term, would be in the third line, the words repair, construct, acquire, equipment, sites, and facilities. Because when you ask yourself, how can I spend this bond money? The sequence of questions that you go through starts with the question, is this an expenditure for the repair, construction, acquisition of equipment, sites, and facilities, yes or no? And you have to answer that question, yes, to be able to spend bond monies. So that phrase is a critical legal basis for great flexibility in managing your bond program over the years. So you see the name of the district, the $98 million, the maximum interest rate requirement is satisfied by the words at legal rates, the rate of taxation, 3 cents per 100, the revenue production, 6.3 million. The duration of the tax is satisfied by the words while bonds are outstanding. And the references to audits, oversight, and public disclosure are Prop 39 driven. So the name of the school district counts as one word. So if you're examining this and trying to see if we satisfy the 75-word requirement, count the name of the district as one word. So this is what voters vote yes or no on. It's going to appear in the voter pamphlet. Also appearing in the voter pamphlet will be Exhibit B to this resolution. Because part of the mandate under Prop 39 is that the district provide voters with a list of specific projects that are going to get funded with the bond. So satisfying this project list specificity requirement has been a challenge, and it's been the subject of a number of pieces of litigation. The court of highest jurisdiction has ruled that in developing a bond project list, the specificity requirement is satisfied by a description of the types of projects that the voters want to have authorized by the bond. So that's our goal, is a description of the type of projects that the district would like to spend money on. So in the first paragraph under the words project list, there's a legal requirement that the district have considered technology, safety, class size reduction, computer and information technology in deciding what the project list is going to be. So we check a box by reference in that first paragraph to safety, class size reduction, and computer and information technology. And then in recognition of the fact that most voters are found not to understand some of the minutia of a building, that they are more focused on the outcomes that are produced by facility renovations or equipment acquisition. We tried to begin the process of linking the board's policy interests and the outcomes sought as identified in the voter opinion survey with the projects that are going to get constructed with the bond monies. So we start with a statement of aspirations. The Board of Trustees determines that the district must. So this project list is going to get printed exactly the way the board approves it, bold words and all. And remember, the project list is a statement of the outer boundaries of what is authorized to be funded with the bond. It's not a statement about what projects you're actually going to do. It's not a statement about any sequencing of project or project priorities. Every project that's described in the next 5 pages has equal standing, regardless of how I may have emphasized through placement or spacing or font size a particular project. All of the layout was designed to capture the eye of the voter who may spend 2 seconds looking at the project list. And when the voter looks at this project list, the goal is to have him or her find something on that page that we know they value. And so we start right out at the top with retain and attract quality teachers, STEAM, safe drinking water, safety, and then accountability. So this sets the stage for the projects that are to come that start on the next page. So for those of you who had the opportunity to review the voter opinion survey, you would recognize and recall that there were various messages that were tested in the survey to see which messages resonated most favorably with the voters. So you had a lot of messages that the voters really liked. So when I sit down and think about, well, how am I going to organize the projects that the district has told me they want funded with the bond? My first choice is, how many categories of projects am I going to create? The more positive messages that appear in a voter opinion survey motivates me to have more sections of projects than fewer sections. Here we have 3. So the first section of projects has this banner, attracting quality teachers, improves student success, repair, upgrade technology projects. Then there are goals and purposes. Those are the voter opinion survey tested outcomes that we know the voters like, and they are followed by the bullet point projects that did well in the poll and which are real life projects that the district would like to have addressed through the expenditure of bond funds. You can see the bolding, repairing aging classrooms to attract and retain quality teachers. It may seem redundant, but you really don't know when a reader picks up a document, whether they're going to look at the first page or the second page or the third page. So when we have a good phrase like quality teachers, that's sprinkled around in a number of different places in case the reader missed it the first time, maybe they'll pick it up the second time. So it's the same principle that governs the next two sections on page B3 on the following page. There's a student safety section with projects that have something to do with student safety and security. And then infrastructure projects wrapped around this getting prepared for colleges and successful careers. So those are the banner projects, and they're the banner projects because we have statistically reliable information that says if the district committed to having these types of projects on their project list, the voters are going to be very interested in supporting the outcomes that these types of projects can produce. The next page begins this dense litany of a long list of typical types of improvements that are funded with bonds. And you can see there's performing arts, there's playground equipment, there's turf, physical education, music, performing arts, amphitheaters. These are all items that appeared in your facility master plan, which may or may not have been scoring as high as the projects that earned a bullet point on the earlier pages. But these paragraphs and the projects that are described in these paragraphs are as equally allowable under the law for bond funding as any other project that appears in the resolution. So there's a page and a half of these typical types of school improvement projects. And then we end with a recognition that we can't use any of the money for teacher salaries or administrator salaries, and that we have to have the audits and the citizen oversight committee and the like. So this project list is going to be printed in the voter pamphlet, as I said earlier. And with that short tour, I'm happy to answer any questions about why the language, why the organization, or what types of projects you're allowed to spend bond funds on.
David, it's Blake. One quick question, and I know I did send it to you, but I just want on the record to make sure that I ask on behalf of a trustee that's not here. The idea of should there be a need to reimburse one of our institutions for instance, our 201 North Douglas site, the district owns it. If there's any work that's done there for, say, a kitchen, something like that, would that be covered in this?
It would be covered in this. And the way that we would think about that question is we would look through the fact that there may have been an advance of funds for that project. The ultimate use of the money is for a kitchen facility or a soccer field or an improvement of a school facility. So under the California Constitution, you can only spend bond funds for the construction, renovation, repair, furnishing, and equipping of a school facility. So question number one, is the expenditure that's going to ultimately result in an improvement to a school facility or the furnishing or equipping of the school facility, yes or no? Then the second question is, as per your ballot question, is that an expenditure that meets the repair, construction of equipment, site, or facility, yes or no? It doesn't really matter that the money may have been advanced. The use of bond proceeds is for the ultimate project. And if that is a school facility, which the district either owns or has substantial right to use for an extended period of years, that is a lawful expenditure, and you will be able to reimburse yourself or the charter school for that cost.
Hi, David, this is Rebecca. I just had two quick notes. One was that I noticed that Dr. Silver's name is missing an S at the end of the note on the notary page.
I noticed that too. I didn't feel complete.
Missing his S.
What is missing
And
an
then,
S?
yes, it should have an S at the end of Silver. And then on page B1, B-1, the paragraph little I, the second little I, is missing the arts in the litany of STEAM education. It says science, technology, engineering, and math, but the arts is missing, though it's there on all of the other pages. So just wanted to make sure that we get the arts in.
Okay, happy to add that.
That's it.
Okay, this is Joanne, since we're actually correcting grammar and missing pages, I have one question. On page, well, exhibit B, in the paragraph that starts to the top of the page, which says to upgrade school security. If you go to the 1, 2, 3rd line, toward the right side of that line is the word acquire. And there's a comma after acquire, but I think I'm asking if that comma needs to be there, because are we acquiring equipment, sites and facilities? Or is it, does that word literally just stand there with a comma after it?
Yeah, I'm not, where are you? You're on page B3?
I'm on exhibit B. I guess I'm on B1.
Oh, B1.
Yeah.
And where on B1?
On the top of the page, where right after the paragraph before the project list. At the
So on the
top.
ballot question?
Yes.
Okay,
The 3rd line of
Right.
that paragraph, go to the far right, it's got construct, comma, acquire, comma,
right,
then it says equipment, comma. Is that
right.
word acquire like standalone like that, or does it mean
Yes,
acquire equipment? Site
No,
and
it's because the action verbs are repair, construct, and acquire. And then what they can either repair, construct, or acquire are equipment, sites, and facilities. The slash is an and. So we want those repair, construct, and acquire words to apply to equipment, sites, and facilities.
Okay.
Should we remove that comma between acquire and equipment?
He's saying no.
He's saying no, you
Because
don't
it's
take that
standalone as
acquire
well.
out, that comma out. Repair, construct, acquire. Equipment, sites, facilities. Okay. It's a little awkward. I get it.
David, this is Neil on that same area, the 6.3 million annually. I'm trying to reconcile that with Tim Carty's presentation and just not how, can you explain that? Why that number is there?
Well, that number was provided to me by Tim, and it represents the annual debt service that would be expected to be paid by the levy of a $30 tax after the bonds are issued.
The 3 cents per hundred is the 30 per thousand. It equates to 6.3 million.
Yeah, so when you multiply $30 times your assessed value, I'm told that generates $6,300,000 annually, which would be applied as the expected annual debt service payment on bonds authorized by the measure.
Thank you.
I have another question on page B3. There are 2 lines that feel really inflammatory to me, and maybe they're just there in case. But those 2 lines are under goal and purpose, where it says improve accessibility and so on. The 3rd bullet there is clean up hazardous chemicals from school sports fields. And the second one, the bullet that's concerning, is right above the bottom of page B3, where it says remove asbestos and lead paint. Is that assuming that we have those items in, that we know those things are there and we haven't done anything about them up to now?
You want an if discovered, if found.
Yeah,
there.
and I'm concerned, those are really like, upsetting. So is the idea that if we find them, we would take care of this, or that we know they're there? What's the implication of that?
Okay, so these projects were the projects that the district tested in its voter opinion survey. So the projects that were tested have gone through some collective conversations as to their legitimacy and applicability. If on second thought, it's now believed that there are no hazardous chemicals that appear on sports fields, we can take that out. But that conversation, I understand, has already occurred when Tim McClarney did the poll. So I just,
excuse me. I think that it's referring to the site 135th and Aviation and some of the material that may be in the soils that may be found. There's some indication that there could be some. We already did remove asbestos and lead, some other hazardous materials during the demolition. So it's likely that there will be some need for hazardous waste removal once we dig into the ground and the dirt there. The other removing asbestos and lead paint would impact our Del Air site.
Okay. All right, thanks.
sometimes we use a comma, if any, as a way of softening it for those that find it.
I see no downside to that as a layman.
Right to that either.
Yeah, I think it's
Especially for the asbestos and lead paint one, which is a site that may be improved upon and is.
How about as necessary?
That's great.
That's fine.
Yeah, whatever works, just something.
In both of those, would you like the phrase as necessary to be added?
Yes, please.
I would encourage all the board members to review this in greater depth, now that we have some context for it, to get back for any wordsmithing or further comments. One quick, if you can do this quickly, this is the longest whereas list I've ever seen. Is there, you said there's logic to it, and we could add to it. I encourage us not to. But can you very quickly walk us through why these are here? You said they cover some bases for us that are important.
The whereas clauses?
Yes.
Okay, so the first whereas clause, maintaining the quality of public education, is one of the most positive statements that voters like, including your voters. So we start with the standard bearer of maintaining the quality of education in public schools. And we immediately wrap ourselves around this idea of technology, safety, and basic repairs right from the get-go. And then we say, well, and we acknowledge that we want our kids to be prepared for college, and we want them to be safe and learn in a clean environment. So if you just read down through each of these, for the first 4 or 5, they build on this momentum of how we want the district to be and appear. And then recognize that we don't get enough money from the state. So what are we going to do about it to make sure that we have the facilities that we need? We've done a study. We've determined that there's a need, and that if the state's not going to give us the money, we have to figure out how to do it on our own. And we have to do it with a measure that will be a local measure where we will be able to be assured of retaining and authorizing the expenditure of our funds ourselves. And then when you get to page 2, you know, the law has approved Prop 39. We're going to have this election under the auspices of Article 13A of the Constitution, which allows for a 55% vote. So we have to recognize that there are some requirements that are going to be forthcoming in the resolution that relate just to that. Those include the second whereas on page 2, the third whereas are Prop 39. The fourth whereas is, and we want to authorize the submission of a proposition of this nature to the voters. The next whereas notes that no money can be used for teacher or administrator salaries But that Attorney General's opinion that is listed there authorizes the use of bond funds to pay for district employees who are assigned in any manner, secretarial, accounting, project management. If they're working on a bond-funded project, their salaries can be paid for with bonds. So I add that Attorney General's reference opinion because when we have the Bond Oversight Committee training, I refer the Oversight Committee back to this whereas clause in recognition of the fact that we were pretty transparent that even though no bond funds can be used for administrator salaries, that there's an exception to that rule as stated in this Attorney General's opinion. So I use this whereas clause later when the Oversight Committee gets trained. So we have a requirement as set forth in the next code to project what the assessed value is and to make a finding that we're not going to exceed the Prop 39 tax rate standards, which for you are $60 as a unified school district. And so the next couple of whereas clauses set the stage for what else is going to happen in the resolution. The resolution is going to authorize the filing of the tax rate statement. It's going to authorize a ballot argument, and it's going to authorize a request to consolidate this election with other elections that are happening in Los Angeles. So I mean, we need all those. They all do different things. They either set the political stage for the need, they support the thoughtfulness and research that went into the determination of the need, they lay the foundation for the Bond Oversight Committee, and they set the stage for what's going to come in the rest of the resolution. So that's why they're all there.
Makes sense, very logical, thank you.
One last thing about the whereases. This is on the first page, the second whereas this district wants our students prepared. I'm a little concerned that we start with wanting them prepared for high school. And perhaps we could add to that, our students prepared for K through 8 middle, high school. We want them prepared across the board, not just, for higher grades.
Sure, I can add that to they're prepared to succeed in, and I would call that, is it primary school, primary grades?
I don't know, Blake, I'll defer to you or Eileen what it should say.
I would say something like through elementary school into middle school and on into high school, something like that. I mean, I'm sorry for wordsmith something, David, but I don't know, Eileen, if you want to spearhead this.
I can spearhead it.
Okay.
Yeah,
Just elementary, middle. high
Yeah,
school.
and elementary, middle to high school.
Yeah, so, right. Anyway, thanks.
Okay. Another reason why we like to use these whereas clauses is because a school district can spend public funds providing neutral information to the community during the course of an advocacy campaign. And there are a number of political strategists who like to send out mail in which they extract portions of the resolution calling for the election. And they like to grab onto some of these whereas clauses because by definition, this is a neutral statement from a resolution. And yet used in an advocacy context, it's pretty good because it's premised on knowledge that we gain from the voter opinion survey. So the more rich the whereas clauses are, the more options the political strategist has in lifting neutral information from a legal document and using it in a different context to help persuade voters to support the measure.
So on that note, I wonder if there should be within the whereas clauses, something more about the safety of the facilities. Because I know we talk later on about the facilities being safe from things like an active shooter drill. I'm not saying that we need to list active shooter in the whereas, but just, something more about the safety of the facilities in at least one of the clauses. We have things like basic repairs, but it's not about providing for the physical safety of the site and the students and the staff.
And that is a huge driver of what we're doing.
I do think it was in the first whereas. I know it's not as explicit, I think, Rebecca, as you're saying, but improving student health and safety. I think, David, that's where we.
Yeah, I mean, that's right there, front and center.
Yeah,
Improving student health and safety.
yeah, I see that. I'm just saying that I think that it is a main driver of why we're doing a lot of this, and it is the primary priority for the district in terms of our facilities master plan, is the safety of our students and staff. And so just wondering if we can make that a little bit more explicit, somewhere in there.
So are you suggesting maybe draw out another whereas specific to improving? David, is there a number of whereases that we have, sorry, I'm looking at the list. I mean,
Neil
are we
just wanted to
limited?
cut them back, but,
After hearing the explanation, they all have value, and I think Rebecca.
We're not, why don't we agree that if you look on page B3, there's a whole category of projects for student health and safety. Which one of those would you like to pull out? And I can have a whereas clause that underscores one of these bullet points.
improving the security
Upgrade
systems.
The reason why I upgrade campus safety for emergencies and drinking water, those were the two highest testing projects that kind of fell into the safety bucket.
Yeah, I think upgrading campus safety for emergencies is the one that I'm most referring to.
Yeah, maybe tying it in, Rebecca, to that second to last bullet,
Right.
so we can somehow combine those two, upgrade campus safety.
And the last, right, the one, because that's about the gates
Sure.
and stuff, but
Yeah,
something about the physical safety of the
Those
campus.
three bullets.
there's three more whereases. No, I'm kidding. No, I'm kidding.
Don't overcomplicate. That's one whereas on campus safety.
All right, I'll write a whereas clause that'll capture the sense of the last three bullets.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions for David?
Thank you, David.
Thank you very much.
That was really important.
Let me tell you one other thing. To pass this resolution, you need a supermajority of 4 yes votes. It is not a simple majority vote resolution. So not only do you have to have a quorum, but you have to have 4 yes votes in order for this resolution to be deemed passed.
So I think then, I think we've discussed this, David, that we may have 4 members at the next meeting, that we may consider this, so we would need a 4-0. That's the bottom line.
Correct.
Yeah.
Not your first rodeo, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Good night.
Thanks, David.
All right, moving on, still in discussion for.
No, Dr. Goldman, I'm sorry. We have 2 recognitions I'd like to, I'm wondering, just because it's
Yeah,
such
let's
a long
do it.
time. I mean, I think they feel very uplifted after hearing all this financial information, more educated on school finance and bonds. But if we can maybe move, this is actually going to be Peggy's report, but we can just move that up and then, so you can go home. That's the bottom. I'm sorry that you had to wait.
Your
for
patience
that.
is appreciated. Let's give you the recognition, so do.
Thank you. We have Myra and Crystal here today.
Good evening, Dr. Goldman and members of the board. Yes, I'm excited to present to you 2 recipients of the Southwest SELPA's Community Advisory Committee's award for its Educational Excellence Award. That was they received this in May 24th, 2022, and I just wanted to introduce them to you. Myra Figueroa is our preschool speech language pathologist, and Crystal Clark is our preschool educational specialist or special ed teacher. So if you please come up so I can present this to you. And it's the 9th Annual Educational Excellence Award in honor of your outstanding performance and dedication to students with disabilities and their families at Wiseburn Unified School District. Thank you so much. Parents are so thrilled. They work with are so thrilled and are really grateful for these two. So I'm really pleased for them.
I'm hoping we can take a
Yes.
Hoping we could take a picture, but just want to say too, just on behalf of the district, I know this year of any has been just such a challenge. Last couple of years have been a challenge to deliver, much needed services to our students. And so, on behalf of the Southwest SELPA, on behalf of the district, I just commend you both. I mean, it's a real awesome recognition of good work. So of excellent work. So thank you both.
Thank you.
And thank you for your patience and waiting for this tonight. Yes.
And as a parent who's had the privilege of having both of them service my children, thank you.
Can you guys come up here?
in front of the district sign. Yeah, probably not in front of the screen.
Yeah. Good one.
Show them proud, absolutely. Right in front, you guys right in front.
Okay, good. Show myself first.
We all,
Yep, for a second.
Oh, yeah, we can do that. My mask is hanging on my earring.
1, 2, 3. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Sorry to keep you so long.
You can stay.
You can stay. You feel free to go, guys.
thank you, Crystal. Thank you, Myra.
Now that we're 1/10 into our meeting.
Should I tee up the next
Please do.
discussion? Okay, so I think Dr. Harbeck is going to share some information on, we're gonna let Lisa go home here soon too, she's been waiting, but much uplifted, I think. We're gonna talk here about our early bird late bird schedule. We do want to provide some information to our families just to give some overview, tentative start times, end times, things like that. So we're gonna just take a minute here. This should be a really short presentation, really short, to talk about our schedule, proposed schedule, draft of it. So Dr. Harbeck.
Thank you, Dr. Silvers. Yes, we just want to give you a progress report. Lisa has stepped up on behalf of the other principals who have been collaborating on this point.
Thank you to the board. So whereas we need a new schedule, this is the result of our collaborative effort. We worked hard to think about the needs of families and to check and double check and triple check that we were meeting all of our obligations for instructional minutes as required. And here's what it looks like. So on the left column is the proposed full day schedule. So breakfast would begin for all students at 8 a.m. And would go through 8:20 for our 1st through 5th graders who would at that time begin walking to class, and continue a little longer for our kindergartners. Our TK and K students would have a start time of 8:45, and our 1st through 5th graders would have a start time then of 8:30. TK through K would then dismiss at 2 p.m. and 1st through 5th would dismiss at 3 p.m. If you notice, the center column would be for our minimum days. There are very few of those throughout the school year, but that is the schedule, dismissing at 11:30 and noon respectively. And then on the right, you see shortened days. There are a number of those, primarily because there are Wednesdays throughout the school year. So Wednesday will be an early dismissal day to allow time for teacher planning and collaboration, which is important and we know that's important because of teacher feedback and wanting to make sure that they had enough time to prepare. So that is the schedule. We've been working to elicit input from our teachers. So we had a chance to all of the school sites meet with our guiding coalitions. At Cabrillo, we had a chance to talk at a staff meeting. The other schools did as well right before we dismissed from school. I can speak to Cabrillo. We have sent out a survey to all of our staff members. People have had a chance to send input and ideas my way. I have a group of teachers who've stepped forward and want to work with me on a closer level. We're going to actually meet this coming Monday on Zoom. We're starting by looking at some schedules and ideas from other schools. We've been collaborating online to look at the pieces that we would fit into this. So lunches, recesses, specials. all
We
of
have
those things.
teachers from multiple school sites.
I'm just working with Cabrio's teachers, so I think Albert and Hugo are reaching out to their own teachers at their sites.
I mean, there are some unique logistics that go on each school site.
Right.
So this is sort of the bookends here on the screen, and the other would be more operational in terms of the school and the school schedule.
Right.
Another question, in the share your thoughts, one of the questions about the extended day was staggered schedules. In reading this, I'm wondering, if you're reading this as a parent and you see the breakfast and you have a TK or K, they don't start, why not start them at 8:20? I guess is my question.
To start them sooner.
To allow them the stagger of time. If everybody's coming at 8, there's a
Right. So
gridlock.
yeah, we're hoping that the breakfast window being from 8 to basically 8:35 will allow families flexibility to be able to drop off at kind of a wide variety of times. The choice to have kindergarten start later than 1st through 5th came down to the requirements, especially at 4th and 5th grade, for instructional minutes being significantly greater than the instructional minutes required for TK and K. So that's kind of why the decision was made to have kindergarten starting later than the older
That
grades.
makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask about the start times. I know for high schools, there's they can't start before a certain time. Is that not a same restriction for the elementary schools? Just wanted to confirm that. Okay.
I also want to say, as we go through this process of the schedule this year, I've asked the principals, or if I haven't asked them, should have, that this is a draft year, and essentially as we move into next year, and if we need to do some erasing or changing, obviously we don't want to go backwards, but if there's a way to adjust some of these schedules to make it better. We know that there may be issues with traffic, and we're gonna have to navigate that and have to make some adjustments. We'll do that this year, and we'll take note, definitely take action.
So just to confirm that the parents would be able to drop off, let's say a TK or kindergarten student anytime between 8 and 8:45. So they actually have a 45-minute window versus a 10-minute window that we have now. And the same thing for the 1st through 5th grade, they would be able to drop off between 8 and 8:30, as opposed to just 8 and 8:10 or whatever.
Yes, exactly. And should the board, move forward with this schedule, as I said, the next steps would be eliciting input from our sites to look at all of the details. Our teachers are really important in looking at all of the little pieces to make sure that we are doing our best. Because we will have to make plans for arrival, make new plans for dismissal, all of those things. And now we will have time summer and August to be able to do that.
So the breakfast. The breakfast, is the expectation that the children will actually eat breakfast during that time frame on campus?
Yes.
So when you say they could drop them off anytime between 8 and 8:45, that doesn't quite fit with the fact that they're gonna sit somewhere and eat breakfast.
So most students don't take a full, 30 minutes to eat. So it would be, I'm imagining, where the students, if let's say you're dropped off at 8:05, we would have staff available and students would go through the cafeteria line to be able to pick up their breakfast, have some time to eat at the lunch tables, and then move. We're early in this planning to figure this out, but we're thinking that our older students might move to the playground and we would have supervision there. And maybe our kindergartners would move maybe to our pack to wait until the point where they could walk to their classrooms. And we would need to have supervision in both locations. So it would sort of be eating your breakfast. When you're done with your breakfast, going somewhere else to wait until class time begins. And it would have to be a little bit fluid because we would be having students dropped off kind of throughout that window. I'm imagining some students will come and want to get school breakfast. Some may bring a breakfast with them and just want to sit, and eat it on campus. So we're part of, preparing for all the details will be to look at all of those things.
Yeah. This may be a question for you or Dr. Silvers or someone. What percentage of our students are actually getting breakfast?
We have no idea.
Yeah.
This will be the first shot at this, so we literally have no idea. So we'll have to balance. I think actually what we're gonna see is more people that utilize that time, whether it's for breakfast or not, to allow for a staggered approach, so we're not dealing with large traffic
I imagine it will be a chaos the first week or two until people figure it out, and then we'll go from there.
I think
Hopefully not chaos.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Yeah, the wrong word.
I was gonna
It'll
say,
be more busy. That's.
Yeah.
we'll figure it out.
Organized busyness.
Yeah, there you go.
We'll have to have really strong communication going into school, in August to make sure families know. And like Dr. Harbeck said, we wanted the same window regardless of the altered start time so that families with siblings and have a kindergartner and a second grader would be able to drop off at the same time, is the thinking behind that.
Can I just add to, just want to really thank, the team, thank Eileen. And I mean, this was a quick turnaround, from the last meeting, the conversation we had from Eileen to, Lisa has put a tremendous amount of time into this, and I just thank you for doing that, looking at the logistics, the minutes, moving things around to make sure that we're meeting the minutes, the teachers that have offered to support this process. Just really thankful to that, to them. As well as everybody else that's put in the time, but really looking at the teacher leaders that have stepped up. Lisa's just been instrumental in this process, and Eileen for her leadership on it. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Also appreciate the teachers being involved in this, of course.
Absolutely.
One thing, a note here, and my apologies for not catching it. We try to look at if we're going to be involving or acknowledging or having presentations from our staff or our teachers and put them first. I missed that. I encourage us to make sure in our future agendas, we are looking into that the greatest we can. So, you guys don't have to hang out. So Lisa, again, feel free to hit the road. Thank you so very much for bearing with us. Appreciate it. Moving on to district updates. 5.1, the Wiseburn Da Vinci School Partnership. We, as part of our responsibility and agreements with Da Vinci, we play a role, and I say we being members of the board, and in this case it was Joanne and myself, with helping select new board member when one leaves. A board member did move on, thus a vacancy was created, and we had a process in which we interviewed the applicants, of which there were 4 remarkably talented people. The choice was very difficult, and Joanne, I turn to you to give us the results and the findings and validate.
Sure, Neil, thanks. As Dr. Goldman said, we had an opportunity to work with 2 of the Da Vinci board members to, in a partnership, actually interview the 4 people who were so brave and volunteered to put their names in the hat for interviews for the Da Vinci board. We also then, after the interviews, Joe Weber, Ray, Neil, and I had a chance to get together and discuss our views and the great candidates and how we thought they would best fit into this role. And we came together in agreement with the decision and selected and to also add to this, all of the candidates were Wiseburn residents. The board member that left the Da Vinci board was a Wiseburn resident. And so the replacement board member was, of course, one of the 4 members of the 7-member Da Vinci board who was a Wiseburn resident as well. So all 4 candidates were Wiseburn residents, and the board, the 2 Da Vinci folks, Neil and I, unanimously selected or recommended Leslie Heimoff for this to fill this Da Vinci opening. As Neil mentioned, all the candidates were so strong. They all offered different skill sets, and but all collectively contributed a lot of enthusiasm and commitment. And Leslie's background that is particularly appealing and applicable to the board is her experience with legal issues regarding budgeting and child welfare. So Leslie leads an organization called the Children's Law Center of California. She's the lead attorney, and she has been working in this area of child law and educational financing and fiscal responsibility for protecting children. If you think about it, children have rights that the rights exist, but the only way those rights are protected are through the adults that work to protect those rights. And Leslie is a star in that role. So her education, her commitment to this field, her commitment to education and to students has been a lifelong journey for her, and we respect that and look forward to having her be part of the Da Vinci board and working with all of us to protect our students' rights and to encourage education that follows those goals. So it was a great process, actually, the partnership between the Da Vinci board and the Weisburn board. And the last night at the Da Vinci board meeting, their board approved that recommendation that Ms. Heimoff be their next additional board member. And we can, I think, talk about that tonight.
We'll have an advisory vote tonight. It'll be an action item at our board meeting on Monday.
Right. So even though we haven't voted yet, I'm hopeful and positive that Leslie will pass the Weisburn board vote as well. We really look forward to working with her in collaboration between the two boards.
So with that said, I'll ask for an advisory vote at this time. All in favor of approving Leslie Heimoff as the board member for Da Vinci, say yes.
Yeah.
Aye. Thank you. And no opposition, obviously. So we'll make that official on Monday, legally binding and all the rest, but the advisory vote is congratulations, Leslie. And thank you also again to the other candidates, exceptional individuals, keep making contributions. This is a very difficult choice and we really honor and respect you all. So thank you very much. We will now move to our information section. We'll start with Ms. Amber Cappy, your thoughts from the board.
Scrolling up in my notes for the rest of all the wonderful information we've heard tonight. So one, I just want to reiterate something that I said during the LCAP presentation, which is that I'm really excited to see the formation of a parent advisory committee that addresses more than just the LCAP for next year, and that will help to expand parent education and opportunities for input and engagement. And so just wanted to, again, sort of reiterate that I'm excited about that, looking forward to more conversations about how we implement that going forward. So thank you. And then second, I know that vaccines have been authorized for children 5 and under. And so I just wanted to ask whether the district is planning to offer a vaccination clinic over the summer or in the fall for especially our incoming preschool, TK, and kinder students who are now eligible. That's it.
Do you want to address that? If you can, sure.
Sure, I know Nisha's been working on that. We're trying to figure out how our partners, when our partners can make room. Also trying to judge, time wise, when it's the best time. There's just a lot of people traveling now. So I think that we don't have any firm dates yet, but definitely it's on our radar and something we want to offer.
Maybe as we get closer to school opening.
Yeah, I think we were thinking sometime in August, maybe mid to end of August, or prior to school, but I guess it's mid-August. Looking for somewhere around there.
Okay.
And then I know we'll also be scheduling some time throughout the year because we'll have our third round, fourth round, whatever these booster. There's going to be booster opportunities for community members and students.
Thank you. Scanetta.
I know this meeting has gone a long time already, so my comments have to do with congratulating all of the graduates in our school district and probably around the world, because this has definitely been graduation season. But in particular, all of our Da Vinci grads, all of our Dana grads, all of our elementary students who are moving from 5th grade to 6th grade, from elementary to middle school. Congratulations to the students, the families, the teachers. It's a happy time. It's a time of rejoicing and satisfaction. So to everyone involved. And I'm happy to be a little part of that as part of the board, and congratulate all of our staff and families and graduates. Thank you.
Thank you. and I'll keep it brief as well. Accolades and thank yous for the Dana Middle School promotion, because that happened since our meeting. It was interesting to note that all 3 years of middle school were impacted by the pandemic in some way. May their high school, may everybody's middle school, if you're coming, and everybody's years have a normality moving forward. May that continue to happen. We'll cross our fingers. Thank you to Joe and Ray at Da Vinci for working with Joanne and myself. Really great individuals, fun to work with them. Just a shout out and recognition that after something like 70 years, the choice blocks are officially joining the district starting in July 1st. So good to see all those folks joining us. If you've been with us, welcome. If you're just coming to join us, welcome as well. And a thank you to WFA and the cabinet for everybody working together over this past year, and CSEA as well. Just difficult time, really great collaboration, much appreciated. Again, have a great summer. If you're not working, if you are, thank you for doing so, and we'll see you next year. With that said, let's go to our cabinet. Our Director of Psychological Services. Anything else to add?
No, I have,
Peggy,
nothing, I have nothing else to add.
Well, thank you, and wonderful, good people to recognize, so thank you. All right, next, our Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources, Dr. Dugal.
No updates tonight.
No updates tonight. All right. Dr. Harbeck, our Assistant Sup of Ed Services, any updates additionally?
No, I think I've talked enough.
I can say the same, so thank you. She said she's talked enough. All right, Dr. Silvers, we're not going to be so fortunate.
No. I do have a list. First, I just want to thank again Eileen, but really thank Sarah Nitzos for putting together a really competitive arts grant. Generally, we get in the neighborhood of this from the county arts. We generally get in the neighborhood of $12,000 this year. We were awarded $24,000, so double the amount. So it's a lot of good work from Sarah, and I think the plan moving forward will help bring more arts to the schools. That's great. I'm really happy about that. Also want to thank the entire leadership team, and I want to thank the TOSAs and the counselors. We were able to spend 2 days together this week, Monday and Tuesday, going through planning, implementation and planning for the upcoming school year. And it's called our second annual how to meeting and conference in a sense. And we spent time in the skybox, just had a chance to really get into the operations and how we would plan meetings throughout the year. Just really good planning. And I thank the Talking Teaching Network, Bill Saunders, for helping us with this process, helping to plan it. But really good work that happened over a lot of time, several hours over 2 days. So thank you for that. I also want to thank the Coatson Foundation. We do have a couple items. I can't thank them enough. I mean, they've really been partners for almost a decade, if not more than that. So, the amount of money, time, and energy that they spend in preparing teachers and supporting teachers in the art of teaching is just remarkable. Definitely could talk about graduations. I think everybody else did. I had my fair share of promotions. Definitely enjoy all of them. It's just really, really wonderful to see. Also got notification just a couple of days ago that the district will be receiving $80,000 in the CalShape program. This is the program to support HVAC systems and plumbing. I'm going to get more information on the specifics of that on Monday. I have a call on Monday with King Consulting. So excited about that opportunity. Also had a chance just a few days ago, maybe it was Monday as well, to meet with the city just to talk a little bit about the pool. I am happy to say that the pool will be reopening on Monday. They're able to maintain the temperature of that pool at a degree, I think it's 78 degrees, 77 degrees, something like that, where they'll be able to open the pool, and hopefully it'll stay open through the summer. In the meantime, we do have these parts ordered, and so those parts will come in, and then we'll be able to fix the heaters and keep it that way, through the colder months. So, definitely some groundwork there. Jonathan Nava joined me at that meeting. There was city councilman was there as well as the city manager. So definitely looking forward to continuing those meetings so we don't find ourselves in a situation like we did today. But very, very collaborative meeting, positive meeting in the end. Want to also thank a couple people. And first, I know the LCAP was on the agenda today, and I say this every year. I mean, this is such a dense document that requires a lot of I's to be dotted, T's to be crossed, and Eileen just spends
so much time looking through it and proofreading it and sending it back to the county to review, et cetera. So, I don't want it to be lost on us that Eileen put so much time into that document and a lot of care and kindness and probably some anger, but all the well. So thank you for doing that.
And it's not, it's just really well done too. I mean, it's a good read.
Yes, agreed. I think it's a labor of love, right? Also want to thank Chelly Fernandez. I know Greg did. I'm really glad that Greg pointed out, Chelly for her work. I mean, she's been running around trying to grab as many documents and financial reports and count strings and all of that as we've been, working through our budget and trying to put ourselves in the position that we found ourselves today, which is largely positive. And with that also, supporting the office of Soka Takun, who just is really her support is just immeasurable. I mean, she does 3 different jobs, probably, if not more. And I think she was contacting, I probably shouldn't say this, but I will. She was working from Germany and taking vacation. But just her support is just really, really amazing. And lastly, Wendy, who all of these board agendas, these board meetings, they just wouldn't happen without Wendy making this happen. And behind the scenes, there's things that show up. It's just, how did this get here? We know how it got there. And just want to publicly thank Wendy for her support as well. I mean, it just it's phenomenal, just the teamwork that we have here. And I think with that, I will end it on that positive, wonderful note. That's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Silvers. Sure. And thank you to you. This has been a draining time since you got here. You've really just been a remarkable leader. We're really honored and privileged to have you. Thank you very much. Action items general, item 7.1, resolution 21/22.35. We do this every month, proclaiming a local emergency, ratifying the proclamation of a state of emergency by Governor Newsom, dated March 4th, 2020, and authorizing remote teleconferencing meetings for the period of June 1st through June 30th, 2022. Motion.
So moved.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I noticed this takes us through June 30th. That's it. This is actually particularly relevant because our next meeting will be on Zoom. On June 27th. Is there any extension of this?
There may be,
but I mean, it's authorized only through June 30th.
Yeah. There's been question on that, so it has not been officially.
We don't know. Right. All right. Well, we'll know when we know. Yeah. Action items, facilities. 8.1, approve the update of the long-range facilities master plan. This is the plan that was presented to us earlier. This is an adoption of, this is with a recommendation. There's no action per se, just the adoption of the plan itself.
This is the actual plan.
Yeah.
This is the final version of our.
Yeah, it doesn't mean we're doing, it's just the advisory we're accepting and adopting.
It doesn't mean that we are going to be moving forward with
Correct,
any of the
correct.
projects, but
Thank
this
you.
is the master
We
plan.
are accepting the master plan.
Yes, this will be the document that will sort of guide any
It is
work
our
that we do,
reference.
hopefully, in the future.
Thank you. Thank you for clarifying.
I would like to move
Thank
the
you.
adoption of the recommendation.
Okay, I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Action items, fiscal.
We can probably take all 4, Dr. Goldman.
If we are so inclined to move, I'll take that.
I'll motion 9.1 through 9.4.
Second.
Any comments or questions about these items? No, I had a note, but it's not important. Thank you. Appreciate the STAR services for our GATE students. Appreciate that. Glad we're investing there. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. No opposition. Action items, consent items. These also we can take collectively.
Okay, I'll motion 10.1 through 10.4.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you very much. Comments or questions here?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And then finally, personnel action items 11.
I'll make a motion to approve 11.1 to 3.
And I'll second and also echo Blake's comments about the gratitude for the Coatson Foundation participation in our district and for the opportunity for our teachers and our students to benefit from this cooperation.
Thrilled to have Anza joining the Coatson team for the first year, and this is the second
is.
year for 138th Street.
Yeah.
So all in favor?
Aye.
Again, no opposition. Upcoming dates and events. What do we have on the screen here?
You know, one thing I'd like to point out, Dr. Goldman, so we do have, just for reference, if you're okay with me just taking it.
Please do.
We do have our Monday, June 27th meeting, 7:30 a.m. via Zoom. Then we're gonna move to our regularly scheduled meeting that will take place on Thursday, July 21st. Instead of our other scheduled meetings in July, we decided to take a bit of a hiatus during the summer and then have that meeting on the 21st, which lines up perfectly. Next, there's a canceled meeting for Thursday, August 11th, which will be rescheduled for August 17th.
It's the Wednesday. What is it? Oh, no.
We actually are looking for the 17th, yeah. So it'll be the 17th, Wednesday, the 17th of August, and that'll be our only meeting in August. That's
Yes,
it.
it is the 17th. Any other items or issues to discuss? Yes, we will have another closed very briefly for everyone on the board. For everyone else, that will adjourn our meeting at 8:36. Thanks very much. Have a good evening, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.